Hello, welcome to part 4 of a series looking at all the US Tier 10 cruisers. And in part 4, we are in the USS Suffering, the USS Puerto Rico. We should really look at getting that name changed, because this might be one of the most frustrating ships to play in the entire fucking video game. Um, it's a very just bizarre combination of a ship that's almost potato proof in the sense that you can go flat to basically any boat in the game and never blow up. But then the armor overall is pretty much extreme dog shit. Um, and it somehow has less survivability overall against remotely competent players than honestly the vast majority of cruisers in this game. Like I said, you can go flat to a Montana at 10 kilometers and somehow only eat 30k. Definitely a thing that can happen. Pretty cool. Um, but when it comes to proper gameplay and not going flat to people, you're way less survivable than almost any cruiser in the game. Even against something like 30 millimeter Overmatch, you're absolutely gigantic. You eat 60-second fires because you're a super heavy cruiser ship type, battle cruiser, super cruiser, whatever you want to call it. I usually call it super heavy cruisers. Um, and you probably have the most inconsistent guns of all of the super heavy cruisers. Certainly at tier 10, you have by far some of the trolliest guns. The dispersion is quite dog shit. You have standard battleship dispersion. And in theory, you make up for that with 2.2 Sigma. Uh, the problem with that theory is compared to uh, Yoshino, Stalingrad, Marseille. Uh, the Stalingrad has better Sigma and better dispersion, but Stalingrad's known for its amazing Sigma. But even ships like Yoshino and Marseille have such unbelievably improved dispersion ellipse compared to Puerto Rico that even with the improved Sigma over those two, and even significantly improved, I believe Marseille is something like 1.8 Sigma. But the improvement they have in dispersion over Puerto Rico is so extreme that you just like never get a salvo that feels half as good as your average Yoshino or Marseille salvo. And so you have improved penetration angles. You have nice pen angles of 22 to 30 degrees. Very nice. Um, but you have a just such a conflicting everything about this boat is extremely conflicting because the only way to utilize good damage is to get all of your guns on target. And you have basically no DPM like any of the other proper cruisers that we're looking at, right? Like Des Moines, Salem, Austin. Austin has like double your DPM without its reload booster up, right? So, in theory, you are making up for that with this armor piercing that can kind of get this like one-shot potential on cruisers. The problem is the guns are so inconsistent and so inaccurate that even with those really nice improved penetration angles, you just don't one shot anything. Um, you one shot less things than any of the other ones. You also, like all super heavy cruisers, you take 60-second fires, and ships like Stalingrad, Yoshino, and Marseille all take 60-second fires as well. But they all have drastically improved survivability in one way or another. A ship like Marseille has incredible speed and maneuverability. A ship like Yoshino gets an extra heal and is effective at longer range, so it takes less shit. And Stalingrad has excellent plating and armor overall while angled. Um, and uh, Stalingrad gets cruiser citadel repair of 33%. I believe Yoshino may as well. Don't quote me on that. Um, so compared to all these other super heavy cruisers, you got way worse guns because they're inaccurate. You take a lot of shit to try to use all of them. Um, They have bad arcs, way worse than any other super heavy cruisers. The AP is way less pen. Yes, Yoshino AP has significantly more penetration than Puerto Rico does. Marseille, Stalingrad, obviously much more. So just getting it out of the way, comparing it to the other super heavy cruisers, you have worse guns overall, and you're less survivable. Now, in theory, you are making up for that with really nice utility, right? You have the basically the same utility suite that Des Moines has. Um, the problem with that is the utility is basically unusable in, like, I would say 3 out of 4 games. I'd say in about 3 out of 4 games, you almost can't make any use of the radar. Um, Like, this is a game where I'm just never going to make use of the radar. It requires me to push into a Des Moines, and really what it comes down to is with 13-kilometer detect and 10-kilometer radar, you have to push in so deep and stay spotted for so long to utilize the radar. And you're not super maneuverable. You're not super fast. You have a terrible, terrible trash dog shit ass hull. Um, and the other super heavy cruisers have worse hulls, but they make up for it with, like Marseille maybe arguably has worse armor, so does Yoshino, but they can either play at range or they have improved survivability to make up for it. And you just don't get any of those things in Puerto Rico. You just have such an incredibly bad hull, with the only feature that's worth a fuck being your almost impossible citadel, especially at closer ranges. Um, and if you've seen some of my other videos, like my incomparable video, my Laria video, you know that I value armor that works when I'm good and not armor that works when I'm dog shit. And Puerto Rico's armor only works, works in heavy quotes. Puerto Rico's armor only works when you play like dog shit. That's just all there is to it. That's the only time this armor is worth a fuck, is when you are not worth a fuck as a player. And I'm not into that. That's not something I'm interested in. Um, got a couple of citadels there. Like, every now and then the guns behave. You hit what you aim at, and the improved the improved pen angles are nice. But I would say when you get flat broadside cruisers at 15 kilometers, um, the over-under on damage, certainly under 30k. In my experience, you're likely to do under 30k. And the problem with that is that most battleships are more consistent than that. Like, legitimately, most battleships at this tier are more consistent than that. And so if you have battleship inconsistency, worse. I would argue that getting people flat in Puerto Rico feels very similar to getting people flat in GK. Like, you might blow them up and you might do nothing. It really does feel that bad most of the time. And so you have battleship inconsistency or worse. You have like almost battleship reload. With reload mod, I think it's like a 19-second reload roughly. You have zero of the survivability that a battleship brings. You have zero of the survivability features that cruisers bring, that the other super heavy cruisers do get, like maybe sit repair or more maneuverability. Your like battleship maneuverability, battleship concealment, battleship inconsistency, no survivability or tanking ability, cruiser armor aside from being able to go flat, and there's like not even much to talk about in this game. Your battle impact is just so incredibly low. The guns don't punish destroyers. At least in a ship like Stalingrad, when you radar DDs, you're actually very scary because you have railguns that are very accurate. So even though in something like Stalingrad you really only get 2 shots off per radar, you're extremely, extremely effective with those 2 shots, unlike Puerto Rico, which is not very effective. And I mean, I'm fighting like a Des Moines. I mean, my team evaporated, sure, but like the game impact on the Puerto Rico is just basically non-existent in the vast majority of games. It's incredibly map dependent. And a lot of the time you just get relegated, like this game, to damage farming. You might say, oh, look at that, you tanked 2 million potential damage. I mean, like, I'm tanking that damage because the whole team is shooting at me. It's not meaningful tanking, right? I mean, sure, we get the pity fuck of MVP, but like, just a terrible game, a frustrating game. Um, you notice like the amount of times I got people flat. Like the only time the guns even remotely performed were against this Grau, this Almirante Grau. Like every other situation, you either basically see dog shit dispersion, or combined with just like you don't effectively Citadel a lot of times cruisers that are flat. Um, and even flat cruisers, even in something like Des Moines, you do more damage. Like that Napoli when he went flat to me the second time, and I got an okay salvo of like almost 20k. It's like Des Moines would still do more damage in that situation because Des Moines would have shot 7 or 8 AP volleys at him because he stayed broadside for so long, and Des Moines would have basically killed him, right? I mean, Des Moines would have killed his daring on the first radar. It's just the again the only time this boat has any survivability over something like a Des Moines is when something like a Vermont just gets you at point blank range and smashes you, and your Des Moines 100% would blow up in one shot, and your Puerto Rico only takes 30 or 40k. Um, but we can talk a little bit more about it. Let's get into the second replay. All right, we're going straight into the second replay. And at first glance, this would be the kind of matchmaker where you would love to be in a Des Moines, love to be in a Salem, um, maybe even love to be like in Austin, definitely love to be in Worcester. And the sad reality of Puerto Rico is there's almost not a type of matchmaker where you can look at it and say, oh, that's nice. Really, the only thing that comes to mind is super low DD count because the radar is almost useless most of the time. Low battleship count, but then here's the problem: is the more HE spammers, the faster you die anyway. So the kind of ships that you want to see to shoot at are like this Smolensk, right? Because we have 305mm guns. We do overmatch Smolensk extremities, but then the Smolensk can burn down a Puerto Rico in like less than 2 minutes, right? Like if a Smolensk catches you in your Puerto Rico and you're hard spotted out in the open, like you're just gonna fucking die. You're gonna evaporate to Smolensk DPM and fire starting. Um, but in a game like this, and Puerto Rico very usually normally struggles with playing aggressively. But if you see my Smolensk and my Kita both seem like they want to play aggressive, um, so I'm gonna kind of risk it. This is like kind of a shit play because if the Smolensk came over this way, or like the Kremlin was here who just got spotted, I could just get cooked. But because my DDs seem like they're not gonna be AFK, I'm gonna push with them. Um, this is one of the few times Puerto Rico radar is usable. And you notice the last game too. The one time it was usable was basically when an enemy destroyer lost his mind. Like last game, the daring suicided because he didn't care because the game was unlosable. And then this Fantask is just like running it the fuck down with none of our team spotted over here. Just like a super interesting situation. I had the AP loaded because I thought there was a chance that if the Venezia shot, my Smalin would see him, and I wanted to be ready to smash him. So that's why. So I'm getting shot at. That must be the GK, obviously, over there. And this is something that, like, to be fair, you wouldn't have the balls to probably do in the Des Moines. Now, if I was in the Des Moines, I would have just stopped at the rock and annihilated the destroyer, and I wouldn't have been in danger. But specifically talking about, how I just gamer turn in front of Ven and GK, yeah, you obviously can't really risk that in a ship like Des Moines because if they catch you, you do blow the fuck up. Or like here, I'm super broadside. I'm like at maybe a 60, 55 degree angle or something. This is a fairly well aimed shot. Like that shot right there, that easily could have been like a dev strike on a Des Moines, right? So this is showcasing that Puerto Rico potato proof armor. Um, but that's what's kind of frustrating about it is that if you're a good player and you're in the Puerto Rico, you don't really mitigate damage shot at you by a good player. because the superstructure is enormous, and every battleship basically with 406s or more overmatches your bow and stern. And then, like I said, giant superstructure, 30 millimeter upper belt for 30 mil overmatch to fuck you. Um, so it doesn't really feel uh, like when you live a battleship salvo, it had anything to do with how you played. It's like you guaranteed take 10 to 20k no matter how you angle. So you might as well bot the fuck out and go flat because you're only going to take maybe 30, right? And you're a smaller profile, so if they have stringy vertical dispersion, like there's a lot of times where you actually take less damage going flat, which is just fucking retarded. And I'm just not into that. Like it's that might be a selling point to some people. Like I know that it is. I know it's a selling point to some people that Puerto Rico can go flat and take 0 damage, but like it comes at the price of this incredibly bad armor and hull shape overall. Um, and it's just the damage output is like so that was a decent hit, right? We got about 14k on that GK, but yeah, Des Moines would have done more because I would have gotten like in this situation where I'm shooting 2 salvos in Puerto Rico, I would have shot 10 salvos in the Des Moines, right? So truly the only value that the Puerto Rico guns have over a ship like Des Moines, Salem, Austin, Booster is this theoretical one-shot stop ability on broadsides. And I wish that that was realistically the case. I wish that when a cruiser went flat, you did 40k them consistently rather than like get 15 to 20 normally. Um, I wish when you raided our DD that you reliably hit like 8 out of 12 shells for a giant hit on them, right? Like if all of these things, uh, if these guns had the uh, dispersion formula, the base dispersion that all these other super heavy cruisers have with the 2.2 sigma, then the guns would be something to actually reckon with. But yeah, I mean, as it stands in Puerto Rico, the only time the guns are like reliably scary is super close range against battleships because you do Citadel up close. Again, Yoshino, Stalin, and Marseille, all Citadel battleships, like reliably 2, 3, 4 even kilometers beyond what you do. But there is no denying that you can get good hits on BBs that are flat. Um, And, I mean, it's like a decent salvo with the front guns, but this is giving up DPM to have guns this inconsistent on a hull this bad, with good utility that's very hard to utilize. The only real reason I'm able to push and utilize my utility is you see how aggressively, and there you go, 10k angled to GK. You see how aggressively my destroyers and my Yamato are playing. And it's really just the fact that they're all pushing with me that makes it almost impossible for these ships to turn around and fuck me. Now, if I only had one DD with me and no Yamato, these guys could all just turn around and just completely shit on me. But obviously the Venezia is just like hard suffering because he's focused by so many ships. And if I was in like a Des Moines, Salem, Austin even, booster, I would continue pushing. What I would do in those ships is I would continue pushing because I would just out trade Smolensk almost guaranteed, radar and kill Sherman. But because I'm in the Puerto Rico, uh, GK is just going to continuously take 10k chunks out of me. Smolensk can smoke up and farm me down in a matter of 30 seconds to a minute. Um, you're forced to like play way more passive than you would think you should in the Puerto Rico. Um, because on paper, this boat is amazing, right? Like, um, the Cliff Notes version of, I mean, that would have been a kill in Des Moines. I would have shot 5 AP salvos and killed him, right? Um, and the disrespect that this Sherman's going to be able to show me is like, it's just galling, man. The terrible dispersion on the guns so often. I mean, 2K salvo is a Des Moines, like, is worse than your average Des Moines front gun salvo on a DD at this range. And you've got to contend with, like, at this point, a 15-second reload, because I have some adrenaline rush, a 17-second reload, and you're just pumping out this fucking pathetic damage. Um, it's pathetic. It really is just, honestly pitiful. How much disrespect gunboats can show Puerto Rico um, is really incredible. Your bad concealment, your bad shell arcs, your mediocre dispersion, um, and your tier 9 counterpart Alaska. Um, you'll hear this said quite often that the Alaska is better tier for tier than Puerto Rico, which is just objectively true for sure. But I would actually somewhat boldly declare the Alaska is better than Puerto Rico. Full stop. It is just a better ship. Um, and that might sound insane because like Puerto Rico gets an extra turret, more HP. But honestly, like the amount, like Alaska gets a better reload, better dispersion, better concealment. It's harder to hit. It's legitimately a better ship. I find it very intriguing. I think if Puerto Rico came out in today's World of Warships, it might be a bit better. But yeah, as it stands, I would rather take an Alaska into a tier 10 game than the Puerto Rico. Most of the time. Um, the guns feel better. The hull is harder to punish. It just sits lower in the water. It's smaller, less superstructure, etc. Um, and then like all the other cruisers that have exposed citadels in this American line, which basically all of them do, right? Salem, Worcester, Des Moines, Austin, they all have a citadel where they go flat and they get punished. They can sit through the nose. Doesn't really happen with Puerto Rico, but they have so much more maneuverability. They don't take minute-long fires. I mean, I would just argue that, like, against most ships, um, even something like a Des Moines feels like it's more survivable. With, like I said, the exception of close-range overmatching boats that can just, like, shove all 12 shells into your nose, or you go flat. Um, I would, on Puerto Rico, I would gladly give up the radar for 30-second fires even. There's a lot of things that I would give up the radar for on this ship. Um, yeah, I would give up the radar for a smaller superstructure and 38 upper belt. Um, I would give up the radar for an icebreaker of some kind. There you can see the improved pen angles coming in nice. This guy's at 40 degrees. We get good pen on him. But I find this ship the least fun of all of the. And we got Confederate. I don't have Halsey on it, but game's over. Confederate's obviously good on Puerto Rico. It's good on all the US BBs, but and then my teammate is complaining about his destroyers as we shit stomped the enemy team and are winning handily. I'm gonna easily win this game, in large part because my Stalin and Keto were so aggressive and my gearing stayed alive to spot and cap. So kind of and get a kill. So kind of interesting. Turned out he was a private profile. Very shocking. Very shocking. But yeah, that's the game. And this sub is just gonna waste our team's entire time. Absolutely disgusting. He's just gonna use his entire battery while I cap C, and he's just gonna grief the whole game, waste everybody's time. I guess to pad his survivability stats. Sub players, man, sub players in a nutshell. Um, I mean, like a decent game. Um, I just again, I think literally all other U.S. cruisers, all four of them, farm damage better than Puerto Rico. I think with proper gameplay, with smart, intelligent positioning, pushing, and dodging, the Puerto Rico doesn't really offer a tanking ability beyond the other U.S. cruisers, as insane as that sounds, because you have like double the HP of Austin. But it really does feel like that a lot of the time because, again, Puerto Rico has to basically be open water spotted showing broadside to have any effective impact on the game, which is not true of any of the other U.S. cruisers. They get a lot of impact by smart positional play, situational gunfires, things like that, utility usage, which is hard to do in Puerto Rico. So don't let these games fool you if you think these are like decent games. I'm gonna tell you right now, these two games in a Des Moines, I would have had way more damage in XP, way more battle impact. Same thing with Salem or even Worcester. And I mentioned I'm not the biggest Worcester fan, but um, this is my least favorite of the American cruisers. Pretty much by far. Even Worcester, which I don't really enjoy the playstyle of, is more fun and stronger. I put Puerto Rico on the bottom for strength as well, legitimately. Um, does it have more game impact than the Austin? I am going to argue that that is a tough question, because I would argue that someone who plays the Austin well, and I do play the Austin fairly well, if I do say so myself, I would argue the Austin has more game impact, because any DD that gets spotted within like 11, 12 kilometers gets bursted into the dirt. BBs get bursted into the dirt. It has torps. It can unironically brawl battleships with proper gameplay. In many cases, better than PR, assuming they don't have 32 overmatch. But we could go back to the port and look at the spec, armor, and all that. All right, we are in the port. Let's go over the equipment first. Pretty standard. Main armaments, radar mod. The only reason I'm really taking the radar mod is you have a base radar of 35 seconds, which in most situations does not give you two full vision salvos. The radar mod and the captain skill help with that. Definitely want aiming systems. The fucking tragedy of having, and I think like you almost have to take damage control mod on this ship. It's either that or steering gears, because you don't island play, you're open water all the time. Steering gears is okay, but like fires fuck you so unbelievably goddamn hard in this boat. Like if you're getting HE spammed and you don't have damage control and the fire flag on, like good fucking night, kid. Um, Concealment. There's like almost a case to be made to take range on the Puerto Rico to marginally improve this trash ass dispersion, and also play at a range where you can't get clicked for 15k every shot and get HE farmed into the dirt. But I still take reload. Again, a lot of it is like the radar. When you do finally get to use it, you can like copium your way into 2 or 3 shots a lot of the time. As far as the captain, it's basically the same captain as Des Moines. Um, and with this kind of being the choice here, AA defense traded for top grade gunner. Top grade gunner is almost in many ways better on Puerto Rico than these other American ships because the concealment's so dog ass that there's a lot of mid range fights where you use it. But the AA skill, you get fucked by planes extremely hard in PR because you're gigantic and you can't dodge, and you take 60-second floods and fires. And so if a CV wants to fuck you, which they're very incentivized to do so because they dumpster you, almost every carrier in the game dumpsters PR. So like this is just giving you the damage con and the heal back in a way that maybe keeps you alive. You absolutely need to have superintendent. You could argue survivability expert. It's then a question of what do you take. I don't think there's any value in consumables specialist on PR because you get to use the utility so little. Same thing with priority target since you don't really blow up. Plus, the skill blows in my opinion anyway. Um, the other thing, can't speak. The only other thing I would maybe, you could like go full copium with heavy AP, but overall I would say like these skills. Again, we're taking the radar mod just so we're trying to guarantee 3 shots because we have reload with a 19-second base reload and I think a 45-second-ish radar, maybe 46 seconds with the build. Yeah, 46 seconds. You're gonna usually get 3 shots off, which at least, and again, like all of these things I'm saying, like you're scraping and squandering captain points to like get full copium out of this ship because it's just like those giant hits you sometimes get in Puerto Rico on broadside cruisers or close range on battleships are just like pure cope. They almost never fucking happen consistently. The guns are just too inconsistent. Um, yeah, this is the build. You could make this trade, and then you could trade survivability for. I mean, honestly, in my opinion, I would go focus fire and last stand. But that is the build I am running. Um, Halsey is obviously good. If you have Des Moines and Halsey is trained for Des Moines, you can just put him on Puerto Rico because the build is like kind of I think identical for the most part. But let's look at the armor finally. And this is like the ultimate problem. Now, first things first, let's look at the Citadel. Yeah, it's a submarine. Okay. Pretty much the only time you ever take a sit in Puerto Rico is plunging fire, mid to long range. That clips, even plunging fire doesn't typically get you in the side on the bulkhead where the Citadel is. Most of the time, like with Wisconsin and Illinois, a lot of the time plunging fire gets you is it comes in, it arms on the casemate, and it just overmatches the deck. Because anything with 305s and up will overmatch, or with 19 millimeters of armor, maybe even a little bit less. But anyway, definitely like 305s overmatch the Citadel deck. So you can get sit at like long and medium range. Something like Vermont. Vermont is like the Puerto Rico annihilator. You go flat to Vermont in this thing, even at 15, and if it's a properly aimed salvo, like you can blow up. But it is a fringe case. But looking at the rest of the armor, the issue is you have this battleship-sized superstructure, 27 ass, 27 nose, no icebreaker, and then the 30 side. And another thing, I know we're comparing the U.S. Cruisers, right? Okay, but let me just add battleships because I just want you to look at the Rhode Island's armor scheme. Okay, and the Rhode Island gets 38 upper. And the Rhode Island gets much more speed with its speed boost. It's more maneuverable. It just has so many more things going for it. It's better than Puerto Rico in every fucking way. If you watch the Rhode Island video, you will have seen that. And Puerto Rico sucks. I hate it. It's probably my least favorite U.S. cruiser. Playstyle wise, I hate it. It's not fun in my opinion, and it's not very particularly strong. Um, I think I have more game impact in Austin, unironically, in most of my games. And speaking of Austin, we will see you in the next one for Austin, and thank you for watching.